Hi, and welcome to my video that looks at narrative devices in action-adventure games and how those devices affect player agency. Action-adventure games provide a mixture of storytelling and action-based gameplay. While storytelling is the main focus of media like books and film, video games have another important primary task, and that is to engage the audience in the act of play. While watching and reading are also actions, play is a much more interactive process where the player contributes to the construction of the game themselves. This is where agency comes in. Put simply, agency is what we want to do set against what we can do, taking into consideration what is being done to us, or what we are being made to do. A healthy balance of agency in a game is being able to make meaningful decisions within the game's narrative format. The first narrative device I will look at is the most commonly used one in video games, the cutscene. The cutscene is a completely non-interactive, movie-like sequence that plays out in order to convey events in the game's story. This device is most limiting on the player's agency and serves strictly to provide exposition to the player. However, there is usefulness to these limitations in that they allow the game's content to be well structured, commonly into levels or missions, and also provides a tightly controlled way for story events to unfold. While players are restricted by this device from time to time, it adds meaning to the actions that a player takes. What's the point of doing something if there's no motivation given to do it? For example, saving a town from disaster adds purpose to the violent act of killing monsters, and the premise of escaping to a safe location tells the player why they are fighting their way through a horde of zombies. Cutscenes also act as a reward for achieving success in a game and to signify progress. Serving as a middle ground between the cutscene and gameplay is the interactive cutscene. These are actions and scenes undertaken by the player that allow for a mix of player input and controlled exposition. A QTE, or QuickTime event, is an example of an interactive cutscene where players are prompted to perform simple actions with keys, buttons, or joysticks to carry out complex actions that have no consistent and dedicated input in the game. For instance, this scene in Grand Theft Auto V, where the protagonist is tasked with joining in on a yoga session, is comprised of QTEs, as there is no dedicated input for breathe in like there is for fire weapon. While these kinds of narrative devices are criticized for being too simple as to be redundant, they do allow for a greater variety of actions to be taken in a game and allow for more controlled sections of the game that contain important story elements to be interactive. With the interactive cutscene, players are given slightly more agency without compromising the agency of the game and narrative. One last narrative device to consider is the passive narrative device. These are story elements that are at the mercy of player agency. They may take the form of dialogue between characters, audio recordings, in-game bestiaries and encyclopedias, or news broadcasts. These devices allow the player to take in information as they perform other tasks, or allow the player to explore the material at their own leisure, or not at all. Passive devices are not generally used to deliver the most important story elements to the player, as they may be ignored or missed, but instead flesh out the story that they are already familiar with and provide more insight into. They can also be used to uncover gameplay advantages in the form of strategic tips. Action-adventure games tend to use a combination of two or all three of these devices, with which they inform the player's agency and help deliver meaning to the player experience.